Welcome to Networking Unleashed Building Profitable Connections, the show where real relationships drive real results. I'm your host, Michael Foreman. Right now, every business owner is hearing the same message: use AI or fall behind. But here's the real question: does AI weaken relationships or can it actually strengthen them? My guest today works with business owners on how to implement AI strategically, not just tactically. We're talking about using tools like the AI strategy canvas and smart prompting to prepare for conversations, follow up consistently, and stay organized while still keeping communication genuine and human. This episode isn't about replacing connection with automation. It's about using technology to support better conversations, better understanding, and better opportunities. If you've ever wondered how to use AI without losing the personal side of your business, you're in the right place. I'd like to welcome to my podcast today John. John is an expert in the AI strategy field, and I'd love for you to tell us in the Cliff Notes version of how you got here today.
Sure. Thanks. And thanks for having me on, Michael. I'm a big fan of your work and thanks for your service as well, if I do say so.
Yeah.
So I'll give you the rapid fire version. So I spent 16 years in financial services. And then in 97, I saw the web coming out. And so I ejected that industry to build a company that was a software development web application company. And then we grew it over the years into a digital marketing agency, and we would build mobile apps as well. And then my kids graduated from college. I have 4 kids. And so my wife and I were kind of like, man, it'd be neat if we were a little bit less tethered to a company with 40 employees. And so I sold off that side of the company and I thought I'd just go be a fractional CMO. And then I landed at a couple of fractional CMO gigs and I realized that I just swapped one job that I didn't want for the same job. So anyway, I spent a year working with executives every Friday in a thing we call the CXO roundtable. And I would teach them something about marketing and keep them up to date. But going from 40 down to 2.5 employees, I needed to use AI to get a lot of stuff done. And back in those days, it talked in circles. And then it started to get a little bit better. And then as it started to get better, I realized that those CEOs were far more fascinated in how I was using AI than they were about marketing. And so they convinced me to create a training program. And so I created a training program to show them how to prompt better and how to understand the context that AI needed in order to get the best results. And then I taught them how to actually write in their own voice rather than this garbage voice that AI would create. And then it was a 6-week course. And on the second week, I realized they weren't quite understanding what I could see in my own head, which then made me go, I need to explain this differently. And I don't know whether you're familiar with the business model canvas, but it shows somebody in a literal grid and canvas the various aspects of running your business, from your customer segments down to your expenses and your partnerships and your key relationships. It's a wonderful thing. But that's when it hit me. I'm like, that's the best way to illustrate what context needs to go into AI. And so I developed something called the AI strategy canvas. And on the third week, I showed it to them and man, everything clicked for everybody. And that's when I realized, okay, I'm definitely on to something. And then LSU called me because they heard what I was doing and they asked me to teach their honors students. And I was like, I don't really want to become a professor, but I said, I think we could have a bigger impact if we went through continuing education. And so we built a program to go through LSU's continuing ed. And then I branched it up from there. And now we're growing again. So it's been a wild ride.
Yeah, you must be doing something right because you keep growing your businesses. So I think you have the right strategy. Okay, let me jump into my questions here. Many business owners fear AI will replace relationships. From what you're seeing, how is AI actually reshaping networking instead of eliminating it?
Well, you got to remember AI is not going to create a relationship, but AI is going to free you up to spend more time on relationships. But you have to know how to use it and when to use it and what to use it for. I'll give you, for instance, the when we work with businesses, most of the CEOs are afraid of it because they know people underneath them are using it and they don't necessarily know it enough. So they call us and say, look, can you bring us up to speed so we can lead that which we are not familiar with? And we want to make sure we're all doing it safely. And so we'll train the executive team and then we'll train the staff. But we have this thing that we call the 10 levels of AI mastery. And some execs say, look, I only want to go to level 3. I'm going to delegate everything else to everybody else. But some CEOs get in it and they get excited. What is fascinating, like I had one CEO who built a tool in our training program, because part of our training program is you have to build what we call a capstone project, which is a tool that you build that can't use API calls or anything else. So it has to be fairly easy for anybody to build, but it has to solve a problem that costs you at least 3 hours a week or more. All right. So this guy builds something that analyzes RFPs. So they're in the furniture business. So they sell office furniture to big buildings and stuff. So they get these big RFPs, 350 pages long, right? And they have to figure out where in this 350 pages is something that has to do with furniture. And then they have to look at it and say, is this the stuff that we can sell? Can we do it competitively? And he said it would take them somewhere between 3 and 9 hours just to determine whether or not they wanted to respond to the RFP. And then it would take them another 2.5 weeks times 3 people to build that response to the RFP. So consequently, they would only respond to 3 RFPs maybe per year. And each one could be $250,000 or more in revenue. So they would pick and choose. So he built this tool. He can now get to the go, no go decision in 20 minutes. And he can get the full response to the RFP in 2 hours. And so he said, this will literally mean millions of dollars to us because we can now take on more of these things. We can respond to 3 per month or more versus 3 per year. But the CEO built this. And that was what was mind boggling to me. So it's, if you know what you're doing, when you learn, you can build magical things. Now, think about what that does to his time. So instead of him being tied up, because he was pretty much the guy who had to look over him just to get to a go, no go decision, and then he would delegate it. That's 3 to 9 hours that he doesn't have to wrestle with anymore. And he's built other tools. And so that allows him to work with his big clients, nurture those relationships, play a little golf, do a lot more. And we get that all the time, especially from people in the sales and the marketing side of things. This frees them up to be way more in the relationship building business than in the tedious administrative task shuffling business. Does that make sense?
It makes 100% all the sense in the world. What you're telling me is that it's taking the minutia out of the relationship and just and having the people talk to one another, build the relationship, and it as well as I do that the relationships is what sells. It's
Yeah.
not like I have $1, you have a widget, and we're going to exchange it, and thank you very much. But the relationship is what lasts forever. So
Yeah.
that's very good.
I tell you what, there's a book called Corporate Life Cycles by a guy named Ichak Adizes. And in it, he talks about the mix or the chemistry of your business. Okay. And he breaks it down into, I'll change the acronym because it would be easier. Doers, those are the people that just do the work. The producers that really crank it out. The administrators, those are the ones that like to put rules in place and structure. Then you have the innovators, those are the idea people. And then you have the connectors, the guys that like to build relationships, like to get the team working together and cohesively and all of that. If you think about what AI does, AI replaces doer work and administrator work. But the innovator and the connector work still falls on us, right? In order to be innovative with AI, you have to be the one driving it. It's not going to just sit there on its own and go, hey, I got a great idea, Michael. So you
right.
have to be the one that does that. It's also not going to be the one that, makes those relationships really sticky. It can't do any of that. So that's the cool thing. If you're in the relationship side of building a business, if you're in sales, or if you're the connector, AI gets rid of all those things that keep you from doing that. And you just have to know how to do it. And that's the critical function. I think just learning how to master it.
I get calls all the time that people are sick of being approached by AI bots, right?
Yeah.
They're constantly being inundated with all these bots, and they think that, and the salesmen of the bots, they think that they're doing a world of good because they're attacking so many people at the same time. But at the same time, all these people are pretty much getting sick of it,
Yeah.
and they are craving the personal touch. And that's where I come in, and I made my business doing exactly that.
It's
You,
interesting. That's how you derive your business. There's a fella here in town. I'm in Lafayette, Louisiana, the heart of Cajun country. Okay. There's a guy in town. His name's Fred Reggie. And he just wrote a book called Tell Me. And I just wrote a book called Ingrain AI. And we've been friends. And he called me up one day and he said, hey, I got approached by a large community banking organization to do a keynote address. But they really would like somebody who knows AI, and he doesn't know AI, but his business is on building relationships, and that he coaches people around that. And so he said, why don't we get together and let's figure out a way where we can do a joint keynote speech? And so cool. So we met, we came up with some ideas, and we have this concept where the two of us juxtapose each other's position. I'm the AI guy, he's the relationship guy. And so we pitched it to them, and they like, yeah, we love that. So we said, look, we need 90 minutes, not 45. And they're like, how come? And we're like, because this is going to be a story and it's going to evolve into something big. And so they're like, okay, let's do it. So it's going to be really fun. I can't wait to get that started.
yeah, no, I'm a professional speaker. I go out across the country and I speak about what your friend speaks about.
Yeah.
I too have an AI person where I go into the same speeches and we go off of one another. He's the AI and I'm the personal touch. And my 45-minute keynote or hour and a half workshop turns into a 3 hour workshop or an hour and a half keynote speech. So I know
Cool.
exactly what you're talking about. And
Oh, that's cool. I
it
thought we were so original.
uh, no, we've been doing it for about 6 months, but you'll have a blast. You'll
Yeah.
just have, because I've been called in because there are a few people out there that do the AI and they want what I talk about, what I service, and they want to bring it together. So you'll have a blast.
Excellent. Cool.
You teach strategic implementation of AI. What's the difference between using AI as a shortcut and someone using it as a relationship building tool?
Man, that's blending a whole lot of concepts. So when we talk about strategic AI implementation, we're talking really about how do you make sure that you get everybody in the organization understanding how to use it and how to communicate about it at the same level. So they have to have a common language and they have to have a certain level of proficiency. But as they go up in their level of sophistication, what they get it to do, are they getting it to do multi-step workflows? Are they getting it to integrate with their desktops and manipulate files? And are they scheduling robotic tasks with it? As they do that, then the complexity of the AI architecture increases. And as that increases, the governance needs to increase in rules and such. All right. That's what we mean by strategic implementation of AI. In a big organization, there are three moving parts, and that's your level of efficiency and then the sophistication of the architecture, and the restrictions of the governance. Those three have to move in synchronization. But in order to really work on the relationship side of things, and let's just talk about intercompany relationships, right? Because as a C-suiter, I think everybody is aware that your rank and file are afraid that you're just trying to replace them. So that creates tension in the organization. And there's already inertia in the organization of we've done it this way and it's been just fine. Why do you want to rock the boat? And so now you have a big issue of more than just technology adoption. You have a change management issue, right? You have a culture issue. So you have to work with people on, they have to feel safe and they have to feel secure. But so that's a big part of implementing AI, is showing them that this actually makes their job easier, gives them more free time, and gives them more time to do those tasks in their job that they really love, because they can delegate the rest to AI. But that whole thing is about building confidence in the organization and building a structure to where people can experience success, share success, and feel contribution, right? Feel like they've contributed, right? That's what makes people happy. I don't know, that's a long way to try to answer your question, Michael. But at the end of the day, an organization is an effective organization has a tight culture. And the trickiest part about bringing AI into the organization is you could sacrifice your culture. You could sacrifice the soul of the company. And we don't want that. What we want is to retain the employees as much as possible, but make them hyper powerful, right? Very efficient, and enjoy that efficiency, not just go, all right, I'm checking out for the rest of the day.
You're pretty much, if you want to keep the culture the way it is, or actually make it better or different, your leadership then has to either change or adapt.
Mm-hmm.
And the lead, because I talk about this all the time in my workshops, the difference between leaders and bosses, right? You want to move the bosses away and just have leaders in your management positions to teach all of your employees to be leaders, not just a boss. And it goes on a whole bit, but I know exactly what you're talking about. How can professionals use AI to prepare for conversations so they show up more informed and more thoughtful?
Oh man. Yeah, that's funny because that's exactly what I do all day long. So if I have a lot of times people schedule meetings with me. All right. They're going to the website, they'll schedule a meeting. I don't know who they are, but the best I can do is get an email address or a domain or something like that. So we have a process that triggers when somebody fills out that form to schedule a meeting. And it's a prospect analysis process. We do the same thing before we call anybody in the first place. But what it does is it goes and it scours the web for everything it can find on them. And then it makes sure that it's the right person. And then it analyzes their business, and it analyzes the structure of the business. It analyzes the history as much as it can. And then it creates a brief for me. And that brief tells me just about everything I could find. Now, if it's somebody who's relatively public, like they've appeared on podcasts or stuff like that, it'll pull back a whole lot. And then it'll tell me a lot more about how they think and how they work and how they act ahead of time. And I had a call just yesterday with a guy, and I already knew that 2 years ago they splintered off part of their company, and it's now held by private equity, and he's in that side of things, and that they were 120 years old and blah, blah, blah. He goes, wow, you did do your homework. And I was like, I didn't want to tell him, yeah, that was like 10 minutes ago. But it's helpful. Now I'll give you another, for instance. So when we have our sales calls, 90+% of them, I would probably 98% are held over Zoom like we are now. And then we have our AI note takers in there so I can pay attention. That's the main thing for me on an AI note taker is I was never good taking hand notes because the minute I'm writing, I can't walk and chew gum at the same time. So I'm not really paying attention. I'm not watching the visible cues and all that. But with an AI note taker, it's taking all those down for me so I can really be involved in the conversation. Now, when that conversation's over, our workflow is it automatically takes the transcript of that call and then runs it into a project that we have set up on Claude. And we have another one on ChatGPT, but let's play with Claude for a little bit. It analyzes that call, but instead of just giving us a to-do list like all the other ones do, we built our own analysis tool. And it tells us what was the theme of the call, what was the purpose of the call. It will then tell me what the pain points were that the customer articulated. It will tell me what the consequences were and what heaven looks like for that person. And from that, it'll help me generate a proposal because the knowledge base in that particular project has all our products and services and everything else. So it creates that proposal. But it also does a couple other things. And one of them is it looks for nuance in the conversation. It looks for those things that we might not think about. And so that particular part of the prompt pulls out some really cool things that you go, oh, wow, I would not have remembered that, or I would not have recognized that. And it's really fascinating what it comes up with sometimes. Then it rolls into another workflow and it analyzes the people on the call, the person on the call in particular, and it'll tell me, it does what we call an ocean profile. It's kind of like a disc profile, right? And so it'll tell me how this person thinks. Now, all it has to go on is text. You can't look at your body language or any of that. But it'll tell me what's important to that person, how they think. Are they a numbers person? Are they more of an emotional person? So it gives me a really good idea. And then it'll expand it by researching that person. It'll expand it into a persona profile. All right. So now I have a solid persona profile and I can save that persona profile. Then what it does is I have another one that emulates that persona profile. And so it pulls in that profile, and now AI is emulating that person, and it reads my proposal. And then it gives me the objections or the questions about the proposal. And then it loops around and it rewrites the proposal to address those objections and those questions. And then the persona reads the new proposal and it rewrites it according to that again. So it goes through that loop 3 times. And then finally, I have a completely bespoke proposal that hopefully speaks directly to that person. That whole process takes about 30 minutes. So I have a completely bespoke proposal for somebody that hopefully addresses everything. And then it gives me a whole lot of feedback, right? I can look at, I'm watching this happen in real time. I'm looking at the objections. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting, right? So I get a much better feel for how that works when I'm actually now in front of the client or the prospect, making that presentation of the proposal. I've already got that persona and I have personally role played with that persona in advance of that meeting, right? So I'm going at it pretty well prepared. And I couldn't do that without AI, but that also compresses the proposal time from what used to take us about 8 days to prepare a proposal to about an hour. So instead of me having an appointment 2 weeks later where the guy has cooled off, I can have that appointment in a day or two. And while he or she is still really excited about what we're doing and make that proposal, that's one way that you can use AI to really get revenue in the door faster.
Yeah, no, it sounds like you've really done it. I like the idea of when you're sending out the proposals, it's reading your proposal, it's asking you those questions, the objections to those questions, and then you're doing it again and the 3 times, and it's really narrowing down your proposal. And it's because my wife's a project manager of a design firm, and she goes crazy trying to think of all this. So I really know what you're talking about, and I know how much time it's saving, and it sounds like a wonderful thing. Tell us about your AI strategy canvas. How can a clear framework help someone stay personal while using automation.
So the canvas has 9 blocks, and each block represents some type of context or some action you need to take with AI. And the first block is the target audience. So we really want to know who's the beneficiary of this AI initiative, right? Who are we really trying to speak to? So if it's a marketing piece, then I need to know who is the target audience. If I'm doing a grant application, I need to know who's reading my grant application, the target audience. And then the company block and the products and services block. You need to know, what does this person need to know about my company? And what does this person need to know about my products and services? And those could be segments of a prompt, or they could be really rich documents that sit in a knowledge base. The next block is the context block. I want to inject my own thoughts, my own feelings into this whole thing. I might have other bits of information that need to go in there. So it's a catch-all called context. Then we have the role. What did we just hire AI to be? Did we hire an analyst, or did we hire a direct response copywriter? What are we getting AI to be? What's that role? And then we have style and brand voice. Style and brand voice is, how does this thing talk? If you don't tell it how to talk, it'll compose sentences that have 17 words in them, or really big words. Like I said, a $10 word when a 20-cent one will work. We have a calibration method for style and brand voice. And what I mean by that is, instead of saying, I want you to use a little bit of humor, we'll say humor equals 2/10. So 2 out of 10. And so if I don't like that, I can crank it up or I can crank it down. I can go 0 out of 10. And there are several other things in there, like sentence length and a bunch of other things that make it sound more like me. And what we typically do is we have all these variables, and we'll take a whole bunch of samples of our writing, whoever it is we're trying to do, me in particular. I would have it analyze all that and create the actual calibration for that based on the variables that we choose. Okay. And so now I've got it pretty much looking at my writings and cloning it in terms of variables. And that's the style and brand voice. And the next one is resources. What else do we need to use here? Do we need to tap into a database? Do I need other research? Whatever. The next one is rules. What do I not want it to do? I don't want it to say certain words that it does all the time. And it's funny because every new model has its own favorite words. And we've at least gotten away from delve, but now we're into some other words that drive me crazy. And then the final one is the request. That's, what are you asking it to do? What are the goals of this particular exercise? So when you pull all that together the right way, then you have a mechanism that will write like you write and sound like you write, so that when somebody gets your communication, they don't go, I wonder who he handed this off to, because that isn't Michael talking.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That was, you hit on so many points and so many valid points, and you're making things so easy for somebody to use it. I can't wait to the end when they have when they I'm going to give you the ability to have people contact you. This all sounds fantastic. Prompt engineering sounds technical, but at its core, it's communication. What does writing a strong prompt teach us about asking better questions in real conversations?
I think the problem that we have is, we call our method of prompting scalable prompt engineering. Okay. And that just means that we're giving you a method for writing a prompt that anybody can look at and understand what you did, and they could change out some blocks or variables and get it to do something different for themselves. All that is a common way of communicating with AI that everybody else understands. And we call it a common language, right? All right. So the more people know how to do that, the more they start to recognize that because we have this strategy canvas that gives you all the context windows, they start to recognize that this is much like talking to a fellow employee. If you don't tell that fellow employee or your coworker or the person underneath you as a leader, if you don't tell them exactly what you expect and you don't give them all the tools they need to succeed and you don't give them the context and you just simply say, go do X, you're messing things up. All right. So the more you start to recognize the thought processes of you, if you will, of AI, then the better it's going to get. And so it's interesting because I don't know which is the chicken and which is the egg, but I can tell you that when people start to think in terms of how would I communicate to a real human, then they realize what they need to give AI to succeed. And they do it in one shot rather than having to go back and forth and discover that they never gave AI enough context in the first place. And then they get all ticked off at AI. Likewise, I think when you get good at dealing with AI, I think you start to realize, oh, maybe in my own human conversations, I should provide a little bit more context. I don't want to pick on my wife, but there are times when we have a conversation and she'll all of a sudden, she'll go, she did what? And I go, wait, who's she? We were talking about.
I was going to say the same thing. So I know exactly what you're saying. And I have to look around just to make sure she's not here. But I was going to, because all of a sudden we'll be sitting down and just blurt something out and expect me to answer it. I'm like, whoa, who are you talking about? What are you talking about? Where are you talking? Like, what? And because she went through half the conversation in her head first.
Yeah.
And then she just came out. So I know exactly what you're saying. Oh boy, I get myself in so much trouble. Before a meeting even happens, how can AI help you understand someone's business, goals, or challenges in a way that deepens the first conversation?
I described it earlier, but
a little bit.
Yeah. So, for your listeners who have never experienced the business model canvas, there's a book called Business Model Generation. And I can't pronounce the guy who wrote its last name, so I'm not going to bother. But it's just called Business Model Generation. The business model canvas tells you a lot about how a business should operate. And so, what we do is we run a business model canvas on that business. So now I literally understand how that thing works. And then we'll even take that a step further and we'll say, okay, based on that way that business operates and their customer segments and their key relationships and their funding sources, et cetera, how can we serve them best with what we do? And so we have a knowledge base that describes for AI, all of our services, our transformation roadmap is what we call it, our training programs, our workshops, and all that stuff. So I have all that in there. But now that I have really deep context about that business and how they operate, I'm telling AI, I want you to tell me how I can serve them best and what would be of the most interest to them. And so it'll produce that. And one of the things that we have on our website, for instance, is what we call the AI impact analysis. And what that does is you answer a bunch of questions about your makeup, your number of employees, and how many of them use a computer, and blah, blah, blah. That actually, once you provide it with that information, it runs an analysis on your business and it runs a business model canvas. And it then looks at what would be the financial impact if you trained your employees how to use AI the right way. And what could they produce? It even gives you some ideas of the things they could produce. And then when you get that report, you say, wow, okay, yeah, if we just trained 50 out of our 100 employees or 500 employees or whatever it is, we just trained 5 out of 40, what would that actually look like? What's the financial benefit to us? And it starts to make a whole lot more sense. And so We do it when we're about to meet with somebody, but we've also made it available on our website. This report, it's $200 or something like that, but it's not one of these bogus assessments that everybody has right now. This is a pretty deep thing. I want to say it produces somewhere between 8 and 20 pages of material, and we actually have to manually do it ourselves. And we do it with AI, of course, but we take our time going through it just to make sure that it's giving you meaningful information. But that briefing is amazing.
Sure. Okay, let's bring this podcast full circle. If a listener wants to strengthen relationships and opportunities in the next 90 days using AI, what one practical habit should they start to do immediately?
So I would give you more than just one practical habit. I guess it depends on how you're conducting your meetings. And I'm taking it from a sales perspective at this point. I think every meeting you have, you should have a note taker in. Now, I don't know. Yeah, I don't have it here. Are you familiar with a Plaud note? PLAUD? Okay. If I'm having an in-person meeting, I'm taking my Plaud note with me, and it's the exact dimensions of a credit card, but twice as thick. Okay. And I just say, hey, you mind if I record this? And they're like, no. And so I turn that on. It digitizes it. It gives me a transcript, and I can analyze that transcript 6 ways to nothing, right? So I get after that transcript. Again, the recording helps me be present. It helps me really understand that person that I'm with and pay attention. But then it also helps me serve them better. So to me, that would be the first thing that I would do is I would make sure that I have an AI note taker. And then I would learn how to use that transcript to learn more about my prospect. And I would learn how to use AI to help me learn more about who my prospect is, how I can serve them best. Because to me, it's about service, right? So that's what I want to know. And AI accelerates that like to an incredible degree, but you just have to learn how to do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. John, this was great. You gave me three times as much information as I thought you were going to give me. I'm going to go and replay this video four, five, six times so I can actually get what you said did. I'm going to go to my AI note taker and read it as well. John, if somebody wants to get hold of you to either hire you for your services or just say hello, what's the best way they can get hold of you?
The best way would be to go to our website. We have two of them, bizzuka.com, bazooka.com. That's the company that I've been head of for 27 years. And the book is called Ingrain AI, and you can go to ingrain.ai also if you want to learn more about the book. But I would like to do something special for your group, Michael. But if they go to ingrain.ai/impact, that $200 report that I just told you about, if they'll see that there's a coupon code. If they give me the coupon code Forman, then I'll know it came from you, and that'll give them 100% off. So they'll get that report for no fee whatsoever. But it'll take about 24 hours to get it. So just don't expect it to immediately spin around.
That's great. That's great, John. Thank you very much. This conversation shows that technology doesn't replace networking. It amplifies it when used intentionally. When you combine preparation, thoughtful follow-up, and genuine interest in people, tools simply help you do those things more consistently. Try one small step this week. Before your next meeting, spend a few minutes learning something meaningful about the person you're about to speak with. Even a small amount of preparation can completely change the quality of the conversation. If you found value in today's episode, make sure you like, follow, and subscribe to Networking Unleashed Building Profitable Connections so you keep getting practical insight on networking and communication. And share this with a business owner who wants to use AI wisely without losing authenticity. If you want to help strengthen your communication, your follow up, and your relationship building approach, visit Forman.com to learn how I work with professionals, teams, and organizations. So until next time, stay thoughtful, stay prepared, and build connections that Technology helps you maintain, not replace. John, I want to thank you again. You were a wonderful guest.
Thanks, Michael. I enjoyed being on. I appreciate you having me.
Well, hold on, folks. Don't go anywhere. Let's hear from our sponsors. David Neal, co founder, Revved Up Kids. Revved Up Kids is on a mission to protect children and teens from sexual abuse, exploitation, and trafficking. They provide prevention training programs for children, teens, and adults. To learn more, go to revvedupkids.org. Henry Kaplan, Century 21. When it comes to making the biggest financial decision of your life, leave it in the hands of a proven professional, Henry Kaplan. Henry is a global real estate agent with Century 21, celebrating his 41st year in business. No matter where you're moving, Henry has the right connections for you. You can contact Henry at 561 427 4888. A huge thank you to our guest for sharing such incredible insights today. And of course, a big shout out to you, our amazing listeners, for tuning in and spending your time with us. If you're interested in my digital courses, being coached, or having me come and talk to your company, just go to Michael and fill out the request form. Remember, networking isn't about being perfect, it's about being present. So take what you've learned today, get out there, and make some meaningful connections. If you've enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share it with someone who could use a little networking inspiration. Let's keep the conversation going. You can find me on Apple, Spotify, Pandora, YouTube, or my website, forman.com/podcasts.